All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Tattooed Preacher Podcast. This is episode number 54. Hope you are all doing awesome today. I want to just say from the outset, I semi-lost my voice. I'm a Bills fan, and this past Sunday didn't do too great, and so I was yelling at the TV a lot and yelled so loud my vocal cords kind of got shot. So I'm not sure if you can tell, but my voice sounds a little bit different. If I sound off, that is why. But here we go. So in this episode, I want to look at a couple different things. I'm going to transition a bit from where we've been for the last number of episodes, looking at the occult from a biblical perspective and how it kind of manifests itself in our culture. Excuse me. See, in our culture. And I had a couple of more episodes lined up, kind of fell through. So I'm going to put those on hold and put those out at a later time. But in the meantime, moving on. So in this episode, I want to look at a few different things. Number one, I want to look at a Christian, quote unquote, Christian cult that has been around for a while, but it's kind of resurfacing, at least in social media landscape. And so I want to address the King James only movement. We're going to talk on that. I want to talk about why it's important for Christians to vote. And then I want to talk about the conspiracy theory surrounding manipulated weather. Can the government actually do that? So we're going to just conclude the podcast with that. So that's where we're going in episode 54. So sit back, relax, enjoy the episode. All right, so to start us off, I want to talk about this Christian cult. Now, they've traditionally haven't been called a cult. I'm just calling them a cult because of some of the recent things that I've seen people in their camp kind of put out and reveal for the world to see. So basically, if you haven't heard of the King James Onlyist movement, they are a group of people who believe that the King James Bible, that particular English translation that was put together in 1611, they think that version of the Bible is the only inspired version. And then all other translations that are out there, like the NIV, the ESV, the NASB, the CSB, all of them. Now, I'm not talking about, other pieces of religious literature from other worldviews or religions. I'm not talking about the Quran. I'm not talking about, the Book of Mormon. I'm not talking about the Jehovah's Witness Bible. Speaking strictly in Christian terms about the Christian Bible. These people think all other translations are corrupt, false, demonic. They think that there is some massive conspiracy where all these translations are out there to kind of lead Christians astray. They would argue that verses are omitted, verses have been changed, and that therefore the only true, verifiable, inspired word of God is the English translation of the King James Version. Now, I'm saying English translation because this is where it gets bizarre, to the point where it's like you have to be unintelligent or deliberately lying to actually fall in this camp. Because they go on to say, and they go on to think and believe that the English translation is so inspired that it can correct the Greek and the Hebrew and the Aramaic that the Bible was originally written in. Now think about that for a second. So I saw this clip and I actually did a reaction to it on Instagram and TikTok, where there was a pastor and he's behind a pulpit preaching to his congregation. And he's talking about how in Bible seminary, when he was there, he was learning how to read the original languages. Because remember, the Bible was not originally written in English. I know for some reason people have a hard, like they forget that, or I don't know, but the Bible was written in Hebrew, in Greek, and a little bit of Aramaic. That's the original language that the Bible was written in. And then from that, all the translations into all the different languages have come from the original Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic. But this pastor went as far as to say, after his seminary class was over and he was done learning Hebrew and Greek, he was making a joke about it, how he was going to burn his Hebrew grammar, his Greek grammar, because he doesn't need it anymore, because now he has the English version of the Bible, the King James Version. The English is the superior translation. And so these people believe that the translated English version, okay, that was a result of a group, I can't remember, 6 or 8 scholars back in 1611. The king had them take the manuscripts that they had at that time, a little group of them, translate the Bible into English. They think that translated copy is now so inspired and so powerful and so God-breathed that it can correct the original. Like, to me, like, it shows that this made this pastor look like such a tool. I don't want to be mean, but when you're up there behind a pulpit preaching and you come to the conclusion and you're arrogantly boasting this claim that the English translation from the original is so powerful, it can correct the original. Like, it's mind-bogglingly dumb. The way he was presenting it and talking about it, it's just like, it's just how, like, you have to either be deliberately deceiving, so you know very well what you're saying is wrong, or you are not an intelligent person. You should have flunked out. I mean, I don't know what Bible school you went to, but you should have flunked out, not passed, because you clearly do not have the intelligence to understand what you're doing. Like, it's just nowhere else does this principle play out, where it's like the translated copy it's like me writing a letter in English and then someone taking my letter and translating it to a different language and then claiming that their translated copy of my original letter is now more inspired and more powerful, and it can be used to correct my original letter. This is so stupid. And it's like, this is what this dude and a lot of these pastors believe. They have this weird fixation on this text. This is idolatry. The Bible talks about idolatry all throughout the scriptures. And it's like, these people have so elevated a specific translation to the point of, like, to make it the only one, and all other translations are corrupt and false and should be thrown out and burned. Now, why do I say burned? Well, because I saw another video, and this was a King James Onlyist church gathering. They came together to have a bonfire. And do you know what they did at this particular bonfire? They decided they were going to burn some things from old to young, all participating in this activity. And they decided that at this church wide event, they were going to burn Bibles. Every other Bible that's not a King James Version Bible. So they got together and you see it. Kids to adults walking up to these big metal garbage bins, flames soaring high, trucking in different translations of the Bible. This is what like antichrist dictators do. This is what happens in parts of the world where it's illegal to be a Christian. You burn Bibles. But this is happening amongst quote unquote Christians on behalf of God. They're getting together and they're literally burning Bibles. Now, one of the main critiques, or maybe I should say main, one of the many critiques that people have against Christianity is the fact that it's a cult. I've heard people say Christianity is just a cult. And to me, it's such a weak argument because they hold to these weird fringe examples that when you actually do a little bit of study and research into it, it's clearly, proven to be a fringe example and not the exact representation of true Christianity. But when I saw this event take place, these Bible burning Christians, and I thought to myself, if I was an unbeliever and I'm scrolling through TikTok or I'm scrolling through Instagram or I'm scrolling through X and I see this clip of this group of quote unquote Christians burning Bibles, it's like I can understand why that critique is applied to Christians. If this isn't a cult-like activity, then I don't know what is. Where you have these pastors, these leaders behind a pulpit preaching that this version is the only true inspired version. It's the only one. It's powerful enough to correct the original language, which it was translated from, and that all other translations are corrupt and false and need to be destroyed. And that the King James Version is the only one that's allowed. And that these pastors need to be listened to as they spew this nonsense. If that's not cult-like patterns and behaviors, I don't know what is. If I'm a non-Christian, I'm even a Christian, and I look at that and I'm like, yikes. That is a cult. It is a cult. And again, I don't want to, it's not my place to judge the eternal realities of people's souls, but it's like, I don't know how you go to a church like that, believe that, and are a legit born again Christian. I don't know. To me, I don't get that. I don't know. And I'm sure there's well-meaning people in there. Maybe it's all that they know. They weren't a believer, and the first quote unquote Christian they met was someone who went to one of these churches, and they get invited to go to the church, and this is all that they know. But particularly the leadership of these churches, man, to be a pastor and a staunch proponent of this, you have to be a cult. And so it's like, if you're listening to this or watching this and you go to a church like this, I would say you need to run. You need to get out of there. There's nothing wrong with liking the King James Version. I'm not saying that translation is wrong or that translation is evil or that translation is wicked. No. A lot of people, I think the King James Version Bible is the most purchased book in history. It's like it's the OG Bible, right? So no problem with liking it, no problem with reading it. It's when you take it to this unholy, ungodly level and it becomes this idol that to which everything else must bow to the point where you're burning Bibles and destroying them, to the point where you begin to demonize other Christians who would choose to read other translations, to the point where you've creating this movement where you're not allowed to go to another church that preaches from a different translation. And again, I'm not talking about translations from other religions or worldviews. I'm talking about the verified, mainstream, well thought out, well translated pillars of Christian Bible translations getting demonized, where churches and preachers who preach from them and read them are like that here to stay away from them. You can't even associate with them. Like this is where it gets very cult-like behavior. So if you're part of this kind of church, and these are the kind of things that your pastors or that your leaders say and talk about, you got to get out. You gotta get out of there because it's a dangerous place to be in. And so I saw this, and again, I keep seeing it more and more. So I thought I would just throw in my 2 cents to the mix, and in hopes that even one person may hear this or may know someone who's in a church like this, just to help them, show them, like, yo, you need to get out. All right, moving on now. The next thing I want to talk about is the importance of Christians and voting. Now, we are in election season, whether you're in the States, which is, I mean, the political world in the States is global. Like when there's an election in the US, the whole world knows about it. And I'm from Canada, and so we're actually going into election season ourselves. But I find US politics way more fascinating anyways. I saw this clip come up on X, and it was a Christian apologist, and he made the comment where he said, "This next election is super important, and Christians can make a difference," because apparently a survey was done that showed up to 41 million Christians were refusing to vote or weren't going to vote. So either refusing to vote or just simply not choosing not to vote. And I saw that and I'm like, what? It's like politics is one of these things. It's often looked at as a taboo subject and particularly is often avoided, and which I don't understand because politics is such a massive part of our world, yet so many churches stay away from talking about it. And the few churches that do kind of talk about politics from behind the pulpit are just blasted. And I don't understand that, you know. I think it's a subject that should be in appropriate times and in appropriate ways, but discussed nonetheless in the church, in a church gathering. Like I think it's like how is it how does it make sense that the whole world or that your entire country is talking about things and then that are important, that are significant, that have an effect on your church when it comes to policies and laws, but yet you're going to stay away from it? Shouldn't make its way into the church. To me, it's just a bizarre approach. But I saw that stat that 41 million weren't going to vote. And it's like in most elections, it often feels like there's really not one particular candidate that's far and above the best one. Oftentimes it's feels like you're picking between two evils, trying to pick the best option of options that are all not good. But even in that kind of situation, to sit there and be a Christian and choose not to vote, I do not understand that thinking. Because even in amongst of picking the lesser of two evils, there's always a candidate that aligns more with traditional biblical values than the other. That's why you have different parties, whether it's Republican, Democrat, or in Canada, you have the conservatives and you have the liberals. So you typically have there's a right and then there's a left. And so regardless of the particular individual running for a particular party and the flaws and things you don't like about them and that you disagree with, there's always a candidate that usually aligns more with biblical values, biblical ideas than the other. And even in this, with Trump against Harris, the whole world hates Trump. And they'll sit there and they'll post every miss, every mistake, everything he's done wrong. They'll post every situation where he looked like an idiot. They just blast that. But then when it comes to the other party, it's like everything is hush hush. And it's this job of trying to manipulate footage and edit footage to make them look smarter, sound smarter, try to wipe away their past, wipe away any mistakes they've done, wipe away all that, like, and it's like it's this staged event. But it's like, in spite of all of that, and you have Trump against Harris, there's one candidate that more aligns with conservative biblical values than the other. And if you're in America, or not even in America, and you don't see that, it's like, I don't know what to tell you. So to me, it's like you look at the policies, you look at what each candidate stands for. It's not about trying to vote a Christian. We need to vote someone who's a born again believer. Like the odds of that are slim to none. But it's like, what candidate supports things that are biblical? What's a massive cultural issue? Abortion, pro-life, pro-choice. That's a massive policy that a Christian should vote on. If you have a candidate that's pro-life, you have a candidate that's pro-choice, which one should you go for? And so it's like there's all of these issues, and then I see this stat where 41 million Christians are just going to refuse to vote. By not voting, you are voting. You're voting for the other person. I don't see how you could not care about the state of your country. Even in Canada, we got two candidates, our current prime minister, and then there's the guy running against him, conservative. Right now we have a liberal government, and now we got a conservative government who's flying at the polls right now. I can't imagine just at the next election, just not voting. Seeing what the current government has done over the last 8 years, and then just being like, it's not going to vote. It's like, to me, it's a God-given right. And I know you can go into the conspiracies and you can look at, does it even matter if I vote or not? You know, the votes, it's all rigged anyways. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if there's voter manipulation happening or whatever. But be that as it may, you still should take the ownership and responsibility to cast your vote, because I think it's a God-given right to do so. And to say like, oh, I'm just not going to do it because it doesn't matter. To me, that's not a good enough excuse or reason. 41 million, that does have the power to influence an election. If 41 million Christians voted the right way, how massive of an impact that would have. And so for them to not do that, I don't understand. If you're in the US right now and you're a Christian, vote and vote the candidate that aligns more with the Bible, that aligns more with traditional biblical values. Doesn't matter if they're not a born again believer, doesn't matter what their failures were in their past and in their life, that we're not voting a pastor. We're not voting a spiritual leader. You're voting a president who's going to instill policies and laws, is going to govern in a way that closely or in a way that more readily aligns with the Bible. So please do that. If you're in Canada, same thing. I think it's important. If 41 million people decide to vote, that's going to have a massive difference. So vote. And then finally, last thing I wanted to talk about. This episode's going to be a little bit shorter. My voice is slowly going on me now. So if you've been following me for any length of time, you know that I definitely have a conspiracy theory bent to me. And I've seen a bunch of clips dealing with the idea that these insane hurricanes happening in the southern US could very well be man-made. And so I reacted to a video on Instagram that was kind of hitting on that idea, just to kind of see the response I would get in the comment section. And it's true that there's a lot of people who are on both sides of that. A lot of people were in agreement. Yeah, it's man-made. And then there's a lot of people who are like, you guys are idiots. But it made me think, because like I've seen stuff and you know, heard stuff on cloud seeding where they can, I don't know, like, I don't get how it works, but I know that they do it over in Abu Dhabi, out there, where Dubai, where in that region to, you know, have this massive flourishing society there, but it's in the middle of a desert. They've come up with this system where they can cloud seed and manipulate the weather to make it rain. When you think about the technology that exists, and not only technology that exists, but there's like, it's often said that whatever technology we see currently today, it's already been out behind the scenes for like 50 years, 60 years. If they have technology to like traverse space, to travel to the moon, you believe that? To send, you know, the Hubble telescope in space to take these crazy pictures as it goes through the galaxy. You look at just the technological inventions that have, you know, come up the last 50 years and the fact that they can do cloud seeding right now. You look at just the level of technology that exists or could potentially exist. It's at least plausible that there could be a technology that could create storms, create hurricanes, and not only create them, but control them. Start them and have them go on a specific track to infect a specific area. And again, I don't want to be insensitive because there's literally tens of thousands and thousands of people who have been affected, and I can't imagine being in that kind of a situation, and it's unimaginable. I'm not trying to be insensitive, but I keep seeing so much stuff about it, and when you like, is it plausible to think that all of this devastation is a targeted effort by fill in the blank? Whatever level of government, whatever secret agency, I don't know. Is that even plausible? And I know a lot of people are saying, you know, that the air is being targeted or Republican states and so it's designed to take out a lot of Republican votes because the election's in less than a month now in the states. And you got massive segments of the population in those areas who are stranded, they're trapped. And the fact that you have people trying to go in there and bring help and make a difference, and they're being pushed away, told not to help, being arrested if they do help. So it's like you have all this other information, and so it's just like it just got me thinking. Could it be? Like, could this be one massive last-ditch effort to disrupt an election from playing out in a way that is not desired amongst the elite? Like, could that be a real thing? And it's just so, like, you put all of these things together, and it makes you wonder. I think there's so much more going on behind the scenes than we could even conceive of, we could even imagine. I think there's technology out there that our brains couldn't even comprehend right now. And so it's like, I think there's always an evil agenda behind the scenes. And so when I heard this stuff about this that they're targeting the hurricanes to target specific areas and that they're controlling it, and then you see all the footage and the reporting, and it's just like, it all seems like, man, is it just one massive coincidence? Because I think this last hurricane, is it Milton? That it's on a path that a hurricane very, very rarely ever goes on. Because hurricanes happen every year. And this trajectory that this one hurricane on the path that it's taken hasn't been on something like on this path since like the mid 1800s or something. And it's only ever been on this path a handful of times ever, or at least since they've been compiling the data. And so you hear that, and it's just like, I know a lot of people are just like, you're an idiot, Joel. Like you just, I hear that a lot on a lot of my videos, but there is a lot of people who are just asking questions. And I just think that as I've gotten older, I've seen the world turn into what it's turning into, and you see culture shift and change. Understand that we're in a spiritual war too. There's a spiritual element, that there are demonic forces out there who want to do the works of the enemy. It doesn't surprise me anymore. And, there's so much conspiracy. What used to be called conspiracy theories have been proven true. And we're in this weird time, this weird age of disclosure, of things coming to light, of, in so many different areas, in so many different ways. And so, I don't know. I just think that is very suspect, to say the least. And so I just hope and pray for the safety and the well-being of everyone that's been affected by the hurricanes. And in the end, God's will would be done in this whole situation. That's my prayer. So, yeah, that's it. That's what I want to talk about. Episode 54. That's all my voice can handle. So let me know down below what you thought about anything we talked about. Cult, Christians and voting, and can hurricanes be manufactured? Let me know down below what you think, what you thought, what you agreed with, what you disagreed with. And have an awesome rest of your day or evening. And we'll see you all in the next episode. Much love, and God bless.